Welcome everybody, and welcome to the our open source day for this particular year. Again, really appreciate everybody joining. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to attend a couple of the sessions this morning, and we have a number of great sessions planned for the rest of the event. So the first thing that I want to do, of course, is to thank our speakers. Without our speakers, events like this could just simply not happen. And so definitely appreciate all the speakers coming out and providing their valuable content to our open source community day. And of course, again, want to thank all of you for participating. If we didn't have anybody to speak to, it'd be a very boring session. So definitely want to thank everybody out there for taking the time out of their busy schedules and joining the event here today. So just one slide on who Tibco is for organizations that may not be familiar with Tibco as a company. We're an enterprise software company, deal with large numbers of enterprise customers. And typically we focus on three core areas of capabilities. So we'll talk about our Connect portfolio, which is really around integration, APIs, microservices, messaging, low-code applications, and so on. We will talk about our Predict capabilities, which is really around analytics, data science. And we will also talk about our data management capabilities, which are around things like metadata, master data, reference data management, as well as other key technologies such as data virtualization. So for Tibco, it's really all about data. It's helping enterprises make better use of their data and to do so in a very real-time fashion, which is a lot of our heritage as an organization. And Jesus did a great job this morning around talking about innovation. Giving the roadmap for innovation for a lot of companies in the past, how Netflix effectively has innovated and overtaken a lot of their competitors as part of that process. And so when you look at innovation, again, just to recap on this particular topic, innovation is a key opportunity for all organizations. And innovation is not just about IT. Right? Innovation is cultural. Innovation is to do with an organizational structure. It is not just about technology. And I will touch upon that a little bit in this particular session. But innovation gives you a number of things, right? It gives you the opportunity to be unique. So it does say, if you are looking to differentiate yourself from your competitors, you can use innovation to do so. It gives you the opportunity to change perception. So a lot of organizations have been around for a very long time. And they want to make sure that they're still seen as a relevant organization with today's customers and what customers expect in terms of how they consume products and services in today's world. And so innovation is really a way to help change perception of what customers may think of you as an organization. It does allow you to compete. It allows you to engage in new ways. A lot of organizations, of course, had to completely pivot in the last 18 months in terms of how they engage with their customers and partners. And a lot of them had to just innovate in order to do so. And in the end, it's all around offering better products, better services, better capabilities to your customers, your partners, other organizations, and really gives you the opportunity to drive your business forward. So innovation is key, it's opportunity. Now, I often get asked, well, what's next after digital transformation? We all know that every organization talks about digital transformation these days. Every organization is looking at cloud and analytics and modernizing legacy systems and shifting from on-prem deployments into things like containerization, function as a service, do that at the edge, do that in the cloud, combinations of all the above. But what is next? What should you be looking at, or at least thinking about, after some of these initial digital transformation strategies? And I usually talk about it in a number of different categories. I'm going to touch on 4 areas today. But the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of interactions becoming much more highly connected with many more inputs. And so just to shed a little more light on that, this is really the idea of things like IoT. So you can imagine in a world where we have many more IoT devices distributed, more than we have today. I mean, IoT is not new. Organizations have been doing IoT for a number of years, but the way in which we can deploy IoT devices and IoT capabilities is exploding. And that's through the advent of new technologies, new hardware, capabilities around things like cloud, 5G, right? A lot of these emerging technologies are really allowing us to adopt IoT and IoT-related devices at a much faster rate. Even things like healthcare, wearables. How many people now have an Apple Watch, using that to track their health, right? These are all additional inputs that I need to then make sense out of. It also results in a world that is much more highly connected with a lot more interactions. So I can now have IoT devices interacting with smart vehicles, and I can have smart vehicles interacting with smart infrastructure. There's a lot more connections that are going to be occurring in the world. And so we need to make sure that as we're looking in a post-digital transformation world, that we're taking that into account. The other part of this is that it does tend to be very decentralized. You can't have a centralized either a technology stack or a centralized organization, or you can't take all those highly connected interactions and feed them all into a bottleneck, right? The world is going to become much more decentralized in how it functions. IoT devices paying another IoT device for some sort of a service. Organizations building up decentralized business networks in order to augment business capabilities. Right? These are all capabilities that we're now starting to see as organizations realize that as the world is more highly connected, not everything can be centralized. And so you're going to see that blending of those two paradigms. You're also going to see, of course, an increased need for what I call all of the abilities. Right? The need for security, the need for integrity, and all the things that you need in order to make sure that this type of system is highly available and operating efficiently. And then finally, there's also what I call life after SMAC. You'll hear that term in the industry. I've seen it a couple times, but it's life after social, it's life after mobile, it's life after analytics, it's life after cloud. What do you do after you have utilized each of those four components in a way that you feel is best suited for your organization? Right? So life after SMAC, life after what most organizations are focused on today for digital transformation. So that is really the application puzzle. How do I start to look at building applications in order to accommodate these core themes? And there's other ones, of course, and I'll touch on a few more towards the end of the session, but these are some of the things that we're having to address. So when you look at it, what are the new application models? What are these things going to look like? If I'm building new applications and have to operate in a highly decentralized, highly connected world with all of these abilities, and I've already done my initial stage of digital transformation, what do these new applications look like? And so I always talk about these new applications being driven by AI at the core. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, more kind of rich algorithms, these get baked into the systems. These are not add-ons. This is not something you come up with after the fact. This is not something you just kind of plug in alongside some other type of application. It's actually built into the application. And then those applications are going to be surrounded with different characteristics. Right, so if I have AI at the core, what else do I need? Well, I need things like real time. I need to make sure that information is delivered in a very timely and contextual manner. I need to support new business models. If my interactions are highly connected and decentralized, what business models does that promote? I mentioned IoT devices paying one another for capability. That's a new business model. You have broad networks of functionality. So you may not have all the functionality you need within the constraints of your application, but other organizations likely do. And we've seen that, of course, with organizations introducing services with APIs and things like that, but this now becomes and needs to become much more flexible, right? Be able to plug and play in a much faster fashion. It has to be immediate, it has to be contextual, secure, private, and as I mentioned, it's not just about technology, it's about the organizational structure, it's about the culture of the organization. Right? These are other key elements and aspects. Because when you're thinking about building applications in this way, you can't have a traditional organizational structure to support this. Right? Remember Conway's law. Software will evolve and be built the way that your organization is structured. If you want to change the way in which you build applications, you need to change the structure. Another aspect of what is a post-digital transformation approach to building applications is, again, borrowing from something that is not new. This concept has been around for a while, but the idea of autonomic computing. Or you may hear the concept of belief, desire, intent software agents. And the idea is that I can build these very discrete autonomous software agents. They have AI at the core. They exchange messages in a real-time, contextual, timely fashion. They can actually maintain some sort of context around and state so that they know the current mode in which they are operating in. And then they all drive to meet a certain goal or goals, and they do so within certain constraints. Right? So this is the idea of having these autonomous software agents really working together to, again, drive towards a certain goal. And I always use the example of an airport. It's a great example in this particular case, because as you can imagine, you've got flights coming in, you've got planes, you've got crews, you've got maintenance, you've got fuel trucks, you've got catering trucks, you've got baggage. there's a lot of systems out there which typically today will operate in a little more of a siloed fashion. Yes, there are some messages and data that's exchanged. That's true, otherwise an airport could not operate, but this is taking it to the next level. So these autonomous software agents could work together to achieve a goal. And the goal in this case, one of them might be to minimize turnaround time. The amount of time between when a plane lands and comes into the gate and then gets turned around and takes off again. If you want to minimize that time, all the software agents should be working together in order to achieve that goal. So a different way of thinking about how you're going to build applications. Highly connected, many more inputs, decentralized. Now, in order to augment or provide additional technical capabilities to achieve those goals, again, a number of different things that are going to be required. I'll touch on a few more of those again at the end of the session. But for now, I'm going to touch on four key elements, right? Things that are being used today, but we're going to see more and more use of in the future, again, to support these new application models. So the first one I'll talk about is really around a digital twin. So this is the idea of building a digital representation of something physical. Now, normally you'll hear about the idea of a digital twin when it comes to equipment. I build a digital twin of some expensive piece of equipment, and I run simulations against the digital twin because, well, it's a lot easier, faster, cheaper to make changes to the parameters and also to break things than it is to do it against the real piece of equipment. But digital twins don't just apply to devices. They also can apply to people. Imagine if I had a digital twin of a patient, a digital twin of a customer, a digital twin of a passenger. Right? These are all key elements that I'm going to need if I'm looking to provide services and capabilities to a person. I need that digital twin. I need to understand who they are. I need to understand what they're currently doing, what they just did, and then what does that mean? What is the best service? What is the best capability? How do I make the digital world blend seamlessly with where they currently are in the physical world? Right? So digital twins can apply to people. They can also apply to processes. So you heard Nicola talk about process mining here earlier this morning. Process mining is a way to discover what your business processes currently are so that you know where your bottlenecks lie so that you can automate that. A digital twin can actually then run alongside your processes to make sure that everything is happening in an optimized fashion. Right? So that's a great way to actually utilize digital twin technology. And then finally, if you put that all together, you get the digital twin of an organization. How can I model what an organization does? So I can do simulations, so I can mock improvements, and then deploy those improvements into my real world, if you will. So digital twins have a number of uses, and you're going to see the evolution, and then maybe they won't be called digital twins, but some digital representation of key business entities. You're going to see more of that going forward. The second element here is around advanced analytics. And this is now analytics that goes above and beyond the development of models. This is things like synthetic data generation. I need more data. I need data to train my models. I don't have enough data. I can't collect enough data. What do? I could do things like synthetic data generation, which, as I just mentioned, is more really around creating data sets that properly represent what it is that I'm actually trying to train my models against. But that's tricky because how do I do it without introducing bias into the data, as an example? So that's one technique. Federated learning or swarm learning is another technique. Right? Being able to push the model to the data so that I can actually, in parallel, train a bunch of models and then aggregate those together where every organization maybe that was training those models doesn't need to see the other organization's data. Right? So you're going to see some of these techniques. And then finally, the whole idea of responsible AI. When is AI too much? Right? This is something we're going to need to address as well. Extended reality. Extended reality, again, I think that the capabilities around extended reality were really kind of accelerated as we moved to effectively completely work from home sort of world. The way in which people want to interact virtually and the way they want to immerse themselves in a virtual world, which runs alongside the physical world, we will see an acceleration in the way in which people use extended reality in order to augment what it is that they're doing. So whether this is augmented reality or virtual reality for the purposes of simulating the best way to optimize a factory floor, or whether it's using augmented reality, extended reality as a way to host these kinds of events. I think we're going to see more of this going further, or further as we evolve and again move into this more new application models that we need to develop. And then finally, as I mentioned, IoT. right? We're going to see a lot more IoT. We're going to collect more data. We're going to have the need to actually deploy more logic closer to the edge so that we can do things like reduce decision latency, right? The amount of time it takes to detect an issue and the amount of time it takes to respond to an issue. We want to make sure that we can minimize that. And IoT and edge analytics and things like computer vision are really going to support the development of that kind of capability. So those are just 4 examples. There's obviously a lot more technology that's going to be involved in building this next generation of capabilities. But those are just 4 that I do see today as organizations now starting to address and look at. And one example of applying those is around the idea of hyper-personalization. Right? I've alluded to that as we've gone along, but the idea here is that I want to make sure that I'm providing contextual, relevant, timely information to the individual, not to a group, not to somebody that I sent an email blast to, but to you. As you're interacting or in your physical world, what can I do in a seamless manner to make you much more efficient, to provide what you need now, to give you the information that is relevant? And so this idea of hyper-personalization, you're starting to see it already. You're going to start to see more of that as people look to these new application models and supporting capabilities. So I call this my buzzword compliance slide. Many more aspects here. And this is really where open source is helping to drive innovation in each one of these areas. I mean, you can go and look out there for different libraries, open source projects that are going on right now, regardless of all these areas on this slide, and all of them are key and have a critical role to play in not only innovation, but in the next generation of applications that we're going to build. Open source is at the heart of a lot of these. This is how we innovate. This is how we collaborate. This is how we build community. This is how we make sure that we're building systems that are proper and correct for the type of world in which we want to live in. So that's a little bit about innovation. That's a little bit about post-digital transformation, the application models that will be required. From a Tibco standpoint, we're also participating in the community, taking a lot of our capabilities and making sure that those are exposed as open source, looking at these different areas, looking at different areas of research and contributing back. And so you'll continue to see that from the Tibco Labs standpoint, and we will also be collaborating with other organizations and the community as well, just to, again, take that open source capability further. Now, for the following sessions after the keynote and panel, you do have the opportunity to actually participate in a little bit of an augmented reality game. Jorg is going to describe the exact mechanics of this here a little later on. But effectively, you'll be able to take your phone, scan QR codes, scan different things on different presentations, and you'll be able to get an opportunity to collect points, which then can lead to some great prizes. And for those of you wondering, for those that were registering, this is kind of that balancing act that we have to play. In order to have a game like this and be able to give away prizes, we did need to have people register for these particular sessions. So that's just kind of one of those things that you have to do. Unfortunately, they didn't make the regulations behind the games open source. So hopefully that's fine for everybody, but you definitely want to participate in the game and win some great prizes. And we'll explain the details behind it here in a bit. So with that, I just want to wrap up my session. Thanks so much, everybody, for attending. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.